this by some people, like, if it's okay to do this. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to start my stopwatch here, so I don't get too long. There was a guy who a lot of you knew and heard of named Joel Cryer, C-R-Y-E-R. And years ago, Joel would come up to me here at AEE and he'd call me on the phone. And he said, Jasper, we got to get you the Kurt Hahn Award. This is really, and he said, I think I know how to do it. And it's really political, and we're really going to have to do certain things, and I really want to do that. And I always told Joel, I don't want that. I don't need that. Please don't do that. And Joel knew me well enough to respect that request. Joel died a little over a year ago. He was a Vietnam veteran, served as a U.S. Air Force pararescue jumper, PJs they're called, a very elite group that a lot of people haven't heard about. Joel had some deep scars from serving in Vietnam. And so Joel has died. And I just wanted to make a comment here. Joel, my God, you're getting the last laugh here. And you didn't even do it, someone else did it. And so wherever he is, he's sitting there smoking one of his cigarettes, laughing at me right now. So this... Okay, now to further get this off of me and onto ideas, I'm going to get going on this talk, and there's some things that I want to touch on. This talk came out of the 2007 conference in Little Rock. Sanford and Binky Toilette Martin, through pressure from Joel, I suspect, got me a speaking engagement on that opening night address, and I talked about unity and diversity and experientially, and I've been told by a lot of people to work off that same talk, the one that occurred in Little Rock in 2007. And so this talk comes directly out of that. I suspect enough years have passed that a lot of you weren't there for that, and so this will be fresh. For some of you who were there, some of this is going to be repetitious, so if you'll bear with me, but I was asked to do that. The other thing that's significant for me is that this is the 40th year reunion. I mean, this had started in 1972 for AEE. By the way, the master's degree program in experiential ed at Mankato started in 1972, 40 years ago. So it's kind of a neat little juxtaposition there. There's been some wailing and gnashing of teeth, and people wondering, should we really even have one association? Should we split up? When you look at you've got the outward bounders, you've got the corporate trainers, corporate training and development, you've got the psychotherapists, you've got the social justice people, you've got the cultural journalism wing, you've got all these different manifestations of experiential ed that have developed the last 40 years. And an argument can be made that we should just disband this organization and have the outward bounders create their organization and the psychotherapists create theirs. I'm going to make an argument here rather as forcefully as I can without being rude. Just stay together and to stay in one organization in spite of our diversity, in spite of the differences. So that's the point of this whole talk, is going to be unity within diversity. And I want to do some intellectual work that I think makes that argument make sense. Before I start, I want to start with a slide from one of my favorite philosophers of all time, Alfred North Whitehead, about the importance of education in the lives of our students. And I just love this quote. It's from Whitehead. When one considers in its length and in its breadth the importance of this question of the education of a nation's young, the broken lives, the defeated hopes, the national failures which result from the frivolous inertia with which it is treated, it is difficult to restrain within oneself a savage rage. That's from Alfred North Whitehead. He doesn't look like the kind of guy that harbors a lot of savage rage. And I just wanted, I'm going to come back to Whitehead in a minute later. My unifying thoughts that I have here is that there are two basic things that unite all of us in spite of our diversity. And the first is a set of epistemological assumptions. In the world of academic philosophy, epistemology is the study of knowledge, of how we know anything. And I think that we all have, and I'm going to articulate some of these, a set of epistemological assumptions. And I don't care whether you're doing experiential therapy, or you're doing social justice work, or you're doing charter school project-based learning, or you're running an Outward Bound course, that we all rest upon a common set of epistemological assumptions. And I want to spend some time on that. You all have heard this in seminars, so forgive me. I think epistemology is to education as anatomy is to healthcare. There's nothing more basic to healthcare providers is they've got to know their anatomy. And I think that just as anatomy serves as the foundational intellectual discipline for healthcare, we're not in the healing the sick business. We're in the knowledge business. And I've often maintained that once I know what a teacher's epistemological assumptions are, I can predict what she's going to do after I know what those assumptions are. So I think that a common set of epistemological assumptions unite us all, and I'm going to run through what they are here in a minute. And the other thing is, the second piece of it, all experiential educators that I'm aware of, and you read through the brochures, you look at the marketing pieces that they do, is a common commitment to character and moral development in the people that we're working with. And that goes back to Hahn, and that we don't just teach knowledge and abstraction. We teach knowledge conjoined with a deep concern with character education, character development, and moral development. So that's going to be the two unifying thoughts that I'm going to stick with as I go through this address. Where did it begin in Western philosophy? If you take a course in the philosophy department in modern philosophy, you start with Descartes. When people look at the dates there, his date should have shown up, it's not showing up. 1600s, Descartes was the famous philosopher who had the cogito argument, I think, therefore I am. And the Descartes' argument he thought of human beings as thinking machines. The thing that made him what he is what he is because of being a thinking machine. This resulted in Descartes positing a strict dualism between mind and body. Mind and body are different things. There are basically three substances for Descartes: minds, bodies, and God. And they are separate substances, and they have nothing really to do with each other. There was some sense in Descartes' positing of the mind as a distinct substance, that the mind was a kind of dead instrument that had to be sharpened before it could be used. It was in isolation with other, from anything else in the world. So the mind-body dualism in Western culture has its roots in Descartes and Cartesian dualism. There's a great line, on my next slide, I hope it'll come up. There's a great line from Alfred North Whitehead on this assumption of the mind as a dead instrument. Here's what Whitehead has to say about that. I do not know who was the first responsible for this analogy of the mind to a dead instrument. I have no hesitation in denouncing it as one of the most fatal, erroneous, and dangerous conceptions ever introduced into the theory of education. The mind is never passive. It is a perpetual activity, delicate, receptive, responsive to stimulus. You cannot postpone its life until you have sharpened it. Most of traditional education assumes that our students are thinking substances. And we've built a whole educational infrastructure around that. Let me give you an example. I checked my facts on this. District 77 School District in Mankato, Public School, Minnesota Public School District, has a gifted and talented program for their elementary school, their elementary students. And guess what you have to do to be identified as gifted in the Mankato Public Schools District 77? You take a standardized test. You sit there, children sit there, they're given multiple choice questions, and they answer those questions, and based upon the score they get identified as gifted and talented. The singers don't sing a song. The painters don't paint a painting. The tinkerers with Legos don't tinker with Legos. The skateboarders don't do their flips and their ollies. You sit there and you take a standardized test. That's a Cartesian theory of the mind at work. And I maintain that most of Western education, and also the Western education that was sent as colonization occurred into India and into Japan and into China, a lot of that European philosophy of the mind as a dead instrument that's got to be sharpened before it can be used came from those Cartesian set of assumptions that spread across the globe. And I think that Cartesian model is at the root of a lot of what we're up against as experiential educators. If the mind and the body are separate, Descartes is very clear about this. The body corrupts the mind. The body leads the mind astray. And I think that's an epistemological assumption that is solidly what we're up against as experiential educators. So that's to my mind, one of the key issues is to know is to cogitate. To know is to think, and to think in a closed box. And I submit to you that that's a problem that we've inherited. I'd like to, if I can make it work this time, I'd like to give a reply to Descartes from John Dewey. Now, you all know this stuff. You've all heard it, but I just want to remind us in the 40th anniversary of some basic conceptions. It's Dewey's reaction to dualism, to the mind-body dualism of Descartes. Dewey's dualism replaces the category of the mind-body separation with the category of experience. We aren't a mind and a body. We are a mind and a body together, sometimes in conflict with each other, sometimes working together. And he replaces the notion of mind-body separation with the notion of the category of experience. And then in true philosophical fashion, the way philosophers like to do, he starts to break it down into different ways of looking at it. The first he calls primary experience. And for Dewey, primary experience is gross, macroscopic, and crude, to quote Dewey. Primary experience means that there's something that matters. There's something that's empirically before us that needs to be dealt with. And the second part of the category of experience is what Dewey refers to as secondary experience. And secondary experience is reflective, it's thoughtful, it's logical, it's analytical, it deconstructs things, to use women's studies. It's thoughtful. But the key for Dewey is that primary experience needs to precede secondary experience. And what happens so often in contemporary education, we assume that the theory's got to come first. You need to learn the theoretical stuff, and then we'll let you go into the lab and do some stuff with some sort of hands-on. And I think one of the things that is key to Dewey to understanding is that Dewey reverses that. He maintains that you need to have primary experience first that will then lead to secondary experience. There's another concept in Dewey that I think is very, very important to mention. He talks about the fallacy of selective emphasis. And that's key. The fallacy of selective emphasis is where you take a piece of experience and you elevate it to a level of abstraction that it doesn't, and primacy that it doesn't deserve. For traditional educators, that is so often going straight into secondary experience. Memorizing textbooks, taking standardized tests, watching PowerPoints, and then taking another multiple choice test on that. That's the mistake they make. I want to take a dig at us here about the fallacy of selective emphasis, and that is focusing so much on primary experience that you never get to secondary experience. And this is a concern more with this group. Oftentimes, I think we experiential educators, we want to do primary experience, primary, and never get to the secondary experience. The analytic, the logical, the deductive, the statistical, if you will. And the key here is to avoid that fallacy of selective emphasis that Dewey talks about. It used to be, back in my day as an outward bound instructor, there was a lot of talk. Actually, I'm still an outward bound instructor thanks to Poppy Potter. Do the mountains speak for themselves? And there was a lot of talk. Let's just charge through the mountains. Let's just go. All that circling up and the analytic stuff and thinking, that's soft. We don't really have time for that sort of thing. We're climbers. We're going to get moving on stuff. And if we do that, Steve Bacon brought this up. Some of the people who probably some of you have never even heard of said, whoa, if all we're doing is marching through the mountains, we're losing a lot of good educational stuff with our students. So one of the concerns that I have drawing from John Dewey is that we don't neglect secondary experience. I'm a philosopher, so I do what philosophers do, and I think about things that I probably shouldn't think about, that other normal people don't think about and worry about. But also in secondary experience, the kind of work that Jim Sibthorpe is doing and Alan Ewert and Mike Gass and some of the other people who are trained and do empirical research. Some of those people are surprised when I do what I'm getting ready to do. But even though I'm a philosopher and a humanities person, I'm not trained in social science research. I am one of their biggest supporters. If you've got Christine Lynn Norton wanting to do a empirical study with your therapeutic programming, or Mike Gass, or Alan Ewert, or Jim Sibthorpe, and they want to collect data, support them. Be on their side. So we need to test these hypotheses. We don't know. Do we really know if white sugar causes juvenile delinquency? Do we really know that people whose cholesterol is over level 200 combined should be taking statin drugs to prevent heart disease? A lot of stuff we don't know. Should women be having mammograms over the age of age 40 because of breast cancer? Those are empirical questions that need to be studied empirically. And I would include in this secondary experience part of what I'm talking about right now with John Dewey to support the work that they are doing. It's very, very important work. And you can't measure everything. You shouldn't measure what needs to be danced. You shouldn't measure what needs to be given praise to. You shouldn't measure expressions of love in poetry. Measure what you can measure what should be measured, but they can get into the same fallacy of selective emphasis, thinking if it's not measurable, it's not worthwhile. That's where the humanities person in me comes out again and says, just because something is not measurable does not necessarily mean it's not worthwhile. So measure what you can measure what should be measured. Take my blood pressure, tell me what it is, but don't tell me that's the sum worth that I am as a human being. So, I'm going to move on from here. There's one word from Dewey that I just love this quote. An ounce of experience is better than a ton of theory, simply because it is only in experience that any theory has vital and verifiable significance. Great line from Dewey. You've all seen that. You've all got it memorized. But I just want to remind you of that. If you have a primary experience of any sort, it has embedded within it theoretical implications. Our job as educators with our students is to bring out that theoretical stuff that's in the primary experience. So use primary experience, but make sure you don't neglect secondary experience, else you risk falling into the fallacy of selective emphasis. So it's a delicate balance there. There's another line, with Christine sitting out there, I got to use it or else I'll get in trouble. Indeterminate situations. Dewey talks about impelling people into indeterminate situations that are primary experience. And our job as educators is to construct indeterminate situations that will bring out the theories we want to bring out and the intellectual rigor that we want to bring out. Oh, can I make a comment about intellectual rigor? This might be helpful to y'all. Sometimes when you encounter traditional educators, they're always talking about rigor. We need rigor. We need intellectual rigor. Well, what do you call a dead body that is dead? It's rigor mortis. And when I start hearing traditional educators start hammering rigor, 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 I think, if you keep pushing that too far, you're going to wind up with rigor mortis. So you might be able to use that sometimes as a tactical kind of thing.